nudge me when I'm 5 minutes in. The reason I'm sorry I talked over you before, but the reply comments are now due April 8th.
Oh, I misspoke. I'm sorry. You're right.
No, March 5th. So anyway, thank you all very much for being here, and thank you to the Federalist Society for inviting me. I do think it's really important. I think it's important for people not to talk in an echo chamber. So thank you so much. And I want to say that Greg, I really enjoyed your paper. It looked a lot like Helgi's fantastic brief in the Comcast case. I remember when I first read Helgi's brief in the Comcast case, I was like, oh, man. I mean, if people don't know Helgi and the quality of her work, they should. I'm sorry. I love you. We don't agree on very much when it comes to substance, but I just think I agree with Brian. You're one of the best and smartest people out there, so you can blush. So I could stand up here today and use my time trying to defend the FCC's assertion of ancillary jurisdiction under sections 230B and 706. I could do that, but I'm not going to, because quite frankly, I think it's very weak. I'm also concerned about agencies grabbing too much with ancillary jurisdiction. My organization paid Steptoe and Johnson an awful lot of money to bring the American Library Association versus FCC case. That's the broadcast flag case, which I won't get into. So I agree with you, Greg, that agencies should not have unbounded power to adopt whatever rules they want. There has to be some sort of ancillary hook if you don't have a specific mandate. But we have to remember, this is what's really important. Your paper is all about net neutrality. We have to remember that this authority debate, this jurisdictional debate, is not just about net neutrality. It's about whether the FCC can protect broadband consumers at all. So let me tick off a couple of things that would be at risk if the FCC has no jurisdiction to regulate broadband internet access, okay? Not the internet, broadband internet access. That's a really important distinction. Okay, we're not talking about regulating the content, applications, and services that make up the internet. We're talking about regulating the on-ramp to the internet. Very important distinction. Okay, so without the proper authority, the FCC can't change the Universal Service Fund to provide money for broadband rather than plain old telephone service. Second, it can't adopt truth in billing or transparency rules. Third, it can't protect broadband through public safety rules. Can't do anything about data roaming rights for wireless carriers. Can't protect consumers from invasions of privacy over the broadband internet. And finally, can't do anything about disability access to the broadband internet. So everybody wants to bring it down to net neutrality because that's the most controversial things. But these things are a lot less controversial. But if the FCC doesn't have power at all to regulate broadband internet access, all those protections go right out the window. So that leaves us with two choices. First, we can find new sources of ancillary authority, or we can revisit, as Greg said, the 2002 FCC determination to classify broadband internet access services as information services. So let me talk about the first point a little. Justice Thomas, for whom Helgi clerked, in the Brand X case, made it really, really clear that classifying internet access as an information service did not remove power from the FCC to regulate internet access providers. So let me quote. So whereas information service providers are not subject to mandatory common carriage regulation under Title II, the Commission remains free to impose special regulatory duties on facilities-based ISPs under its Title I ancillary jurisdiction. So in fact, it's kind of interesting. If people read the dockets in the National Broadband Plan and the net neutrality rulemaking, both the National Cable Telecommunications Association and AT&T have been tying themselves up in knots trying to find the right ancillary jurisdictional hook for the Commission to use to redirect USF funds for broadband. All right, so for some people, for some companies, getting that USF money is really, really important. But if you don't have any Title I authority and you're not going to go to Title II, you're out of luck. Now, I have a problem with continuing to throw the Title I spaghetti up against the wall to see if it sticks, because it's just an invitation for more litigation. It puts the network providers in the driver's seat, and it hurts edge innovators and consumers because they're left unprotected. So while you go running to Congress trying to get authority, consumers are screwed. I mean, let's face it, because the FCC can't do anything if somebody is reading their packets and or somebody is maybe blocking what they think is copyrighted bits, but they aren't. Where is the recourse for consumers? So I and my organization believes that the far better course is for the FCC to revisit its decision to to classify broadband internet access services as information services. As Greg said, there's no higher burden. There's no, as the Fox case said, there's no higher burden. They just have to give a reasoned explanation. And if you read the Fox case closely, they don't actually have to show that their new decision is better than their old decision. They just have to give a reasoned explanation. It's no lower deference under Chevron for doing that. So I would argue that the FCC's predictive judgments in 2002 were wrong in 3 respects. So if we do have to go through that and show why the old decision is wrong, there's 3 reasons. So the first reason the FCC gave for putting broadband internet access under information services was a sort of the notion that internet services and access services were integrally intertwined. All right, and that when an ISP was offering, okay, that's using the words of the Communications Act, when they were offering these services, you couldn't really differentiate between the two. Now, I don't think that's true anymore, okay? Yes, you may still get your email, you still may get the ability to make to build a website, but that's not what you're buying. You're buying 100 megabits per second. You're buying super speedy, fast internet service. That's what carriers are offering to the public. They're not offering email, and you can get email from anywhere, right? You can get Gmail, Hotmail, what have you. You don't need to have an ISP service to get those things. So I want to quote from Justice Scalia, and it's amazing. I'm going to quote from Justice Scalia twice. Okay, so pinch me because I don't think I've ever done that before. And I'd urge you all to read the Brand X dissent. So on this integration point, despite the court's mighty labors to prove otherwise, the telecommunications component of cable modem service retains such ample independent identity that it must be regarded as being an offer, especially when seen from the perspective of the consumer or the end user, which the court purports to find determinative. The Commission's ruling began by noting that this is the 2002 ruling, that cable modem services provides both high-speed access to the internet and other applications and functions, because that is exactly how any reasonable consumer would perceive it, as consisting of 2 separate things. Okay, that was in 2005. This is internet time, folks. I would say that not only holds true, it held true then, it holds true even more now, because the offering of the applications and content really isn't integrally intertwined, and it's not really what you're being offered when you get Verizon, Fios, or Comcast, or what have you. So that's number one, the one predictive judgment. The second, and this is big, and we can argue about this, is that facilities-based competition would arise, and that would prevent some of the concerns that people had about non-discrimination. Well, we know that that's not happened. We have regional duopolies in most of the country. In 20% of the country, you have a choice of one broadband service provider. In 10% of the country, you don't have any choice at all. So I think it's very, very hard to argue that we have robust competition for internet access. And the third point, and this is critically important, is the FCC predicted that consumers would continue to be protected. All right, that there would always, the FCC would always have the ability to protect it. Well, if Helge wins her case and we can't find other Title I ancillary authority, hey, consumers are not protected for all those things that I talked about. So let me close again by quoting my new favorite justice, Scalia. No, second favorite to Thomas, Scalia.
This is all on tape, Judy, by the way. I mean, just so you know.
It's all right. I'm going to get thrown out of the Liberals Club. After all is said and done, I'm quoting now, after all the regulatory cant has been translated and the smoke of agency expertise blown away, it remains perfectly clear that someone who sells cable modem services offering telecommunications. I hope that the FCC heeds Justice Scalia and reclassifies broadband internet access as a Title II service.
Thank you, Gigi.